Notes, my goats. Notes, my goats. Notes, my goats. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Notes, my goats podcast. I'm Steve.
I'm Brandon.
What's going on, dude?
Dude, not a whole lot. We are just living the dream.
Yeah, chugging right away. I think we're
I don't know if
into
it's my dream or somebody else's, but I'm living the
It's
dream.
a dream.
A dream.
As long as it's not drug fueled, I think you're okay.
I think we're good.
Well, prescription drug fueled?
I mean,
might have the flu in your house right now. You never really know.
it's true. I do. There's crazy sickness going on right now.
It's kids. They're always sick.
Yeah, the drugs aren't hard. It's Tylenol and Motrin is what it is. So.
Oh, I tell you what.
I know.
So awesome,
dangerous
dude.
Over here,
yeah,
man.
doing your thing, being the dad life. I get it. I understand that.
Yeah.
So it's mid to late February, right?
It's something.
Something. We're in February. It's fucking cold. We're in Michigan.
It's cold.
It sucks. We hate it, but we're still here.
Apparently.
So Brandon, it's Friday.
It is Friday.
And we have made it a point to do a lot of rock in like 80s and like 70s, 80s, and early 90s rock this year.
Yeah.
Kind of a spot that we were missing for a while in the first 2 years of the podcast.
It's true.
We didn't do a lot of it. So we said, you know what, we're going to try some stuff. And people have been reaching out. And we're like, do you have an album from these time periods? And people are like, yeah, I do. I'm like, let's go.
Let's go.
Who are we talking to today, dude?
Yeah. So Steve, you actually got and communicated with him first. And and then kind of, we did what we did, put our group chat together and got this thing rolling. And so today, guys, we are talking with comedian and podcaster Shane Rogers. Shane, thanks for coming on the podcast. How you doing?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
It's going to be so much fun. So we reached out, and I think, was it on Podcast Nation that you guys got together? Yeah. Okay.
I think so.
So Shane, Steve kind of posted this thing like, hey, we're looking for people. And you're like, hey, let's go. Let's do this. So you provided us with an album that we're going to talk about today. What album are we talking about?
We are talking about Appetite for Destruction from 1987. We were talking about the 80s. This is the quintessential 80s rock album. I don't think you get more 80s or rock than this.
Absolutely.
It almost doesn't need an introduction. I feel kind of silly telling people about Axl Rose and Slash. I mean, we know this album, and it's a classic. It'll be interesting as we get into it. There are kind of ups and downs on this album. Listening back, there are some tracks that I'm less enthusiastic about than I was as a teenager. But overall, I think that this is still the pinnacle of guitar rock. And it just holds up. It's just an amazing rock album.
I completely agree. Steve, are you talking? Because you're not, your mouth is moving, but you're not plugged in. Gosh, you slacker.
1 second.
Approximately 10 hours later.
Am I back?
You're back.
All right. Now I'm back. Stupid headphones. It is like that 80s rock of like excess. Like between Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue are like the excess rock. Like people think nowadays when you talk about just one story from Guns N' Roses or Motley Crue, and they're like, there's no fucking way that happened. And there's probably video of it now somewhere, because you're just like, there's no way that actually happened. And like, kids, in 20 years, we're gonna start telling people like, this happened in the 80s. What? Yeah, and those people are all still alive, most of them at least. They're like, how did they make it? Nobody knows. So I love this time period, because especially the LA scene in the late 80s, early 90s, because there was so much going on with the rock music, and then hip hop was kind of coming in, the gangster rap was kind of coming in at the same time, and then everything just kind of exploded. And then you had grunge kind of come down from Seattle. Like the whole West Coast in the late 80s, early 90s was just the mecca of music at that point. It's pretty awesome. Now, Guns N' Roses, like you said, they don't really need an introduction here, but they are an American rock band from LA. Active since 1985. They are still currently active and touring. Current members: Axl Rose, yes, he is still around. Slash, Duff McKagan, Richard Fortus, Frank Farrar, Dizzy Reed, and Melissa Reese. Now, this band has had lots of other people in it, because Axl tends to piss people off quite frequently.
Sounds like
He's a
fun.
hard person to work with. People have quit this band, joined it, and quit again. It just kind of is what it is. Now, notable members that have been in here: Josh Freese, who is a guerrilla drummer for lots of bands. There's rumors he might be the drummer for the new Foo Fighters drummer. Not sure if I've read, haven't read that. They haven't confirmed it yet, but he is going to play a couple of shows this summer with them, and that's where most people are kind of heading. Is Josh Freese will take over Taylor at the Foo Fighters. Don Henley was in fucking Guns N' Roses, the Eagles. Wow. That Don Henley. Buckethead. Yep, it's exactly who it is. Guy wore a KFC bucket on his head, play guitar and mask. I was pretty sure it was still actually Slash. He was just in disguise, but it wasn't.
It's very different styles. Buckethead,
very different styles, but it's like you're like looking at him and you're just like, that could be Slash. Like it could be. Like you don't see his face, so he's man behind a curtain there, and with a KFC bucket on his head. You do your thing. And then Robert Finnick was also in this, and he was in Nine Inch Nails as well. So there's like the notable members. There's been so many others though, because like I said, Axl goes through band members like toilet paper. They have 6 studio albums, 1 live album, 20 singles. Now, all 6 of their albums were top 5 in the Billboard 200, with 2 getting to number 1. This was one of them. The only, as big as this band was, they only had 1 single that hit number 1 on the Hot 100. Only one.
Sweet Child.
It was Sweet Child of Mine on this album.
Interesting.
Most of the band, besides Dizzy Reed and Axl, left the band by 98. As Axl worked to replace members, the band is responsible for the most expensive album of all time. Chinese Democracy.
Mm-hmm.
It was released in 2008 and cost an estimated $14 million to make one album.
What?
And it was a dumpster fire.
It was never heard
bad.
of it. No,
it was so bad.
Huh.
Yes. And Axl, it was when Axl was kind of chubby and like was losing his mind, and then like thought he was smarter than the room, which is pretty similar to Axl. But yeah, it was not good, guys. It was when he was doing tours, doing shows, and leaving either before the band started playing or mid-show, and he would just walk out.
Yeah.
You pay $90 a seat to go see this guy play, if not more in some areas, and he would just leave. The other band's playing, and he starts singing a song, and he's like, fucking him out, and he just there goes Axl. Damn it.
Axl is what happens when someone just gets, a really brilliant guy gets too much money and too many yes men, and he's just at the point where he's lost grip with reality. He doesn't understand what's acceptable anymore.
And yeah, I would say it's gotten better because he did get Slash and Duff McKagan to rejoin the band in 2016 to kick off the Not in This Lifetime tour, which did conclude right before COVID kind of kicked off it concluded in 2019. This one grossed $584 million.
Wow.
It pretty much covered Chinese Democracy and a little bit more. It is the 3rd highest grossing tour of all time. I think with getting Slash and Duff back, they were like able to put the guardrails on Axl a little bit. Just say, no, this is a gift horse, man. Like, no, don't fuck around. We're not playing Chinese Democracy at all. Like, nope. We're doing this.
Hope that maybe age and wisdom has kicked in just a little bit. Maybe he's
maybe
starting to mellow
I think drugs might have knocked that out, but it's there. Definitely age is there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom, it's one of those things. They did so. They were inducted in the Hall of Fame. They've been inducted in multiple Hall of Fames. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2012. Sold over 100 million albums. They don't have any Grammy nominations. Wow. No Grammy noms or wins. I mean, I was floored. They didn't get any Grammys.
Clearly, you wouldn't win if you don't have any noms, Steve.
It's 2023 and weirder shit has happened.
Anything can happen. I guess. Yeah, you're right.
Weirder shit has happened. Like a brutal snub, though.
Yeah,
for sure.
I can't. Like the late 80s, early 90s, with they were putting out just banger after banger. I can't believe they didn't even get nominated for Best Rock Album.
That feels personal. Like somebody knew Axl.
Axl pissed somebody off.
Yeah. He pissed a lot of people off, but yes. And I feel bad for guys like Slash and Duff and Dizzy because they're fantastic musicians and they deserve to get recognized for it, which the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I guess, is a good one, and they've got a star in Hollywood and everything else, but that sucks. Now Axl has said the band was inspired by 5 major bands and then a bunch of other smaller ones, but the major ones were AC/DC, Queen, the Rolling Stones, and Aerosmith. I guess it's 4. I can't count 4 major bands: the Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, AC/DC, and Queen. You can kind of see a little bit of that in each of their stuff, especially the lead singers of all of those bands,
Mm-hmm.
and how Axl kind of took, like, merged all of their personas into one person.
Yeah.
And was that showman. Now Guns N' Roses has influenced, name it, really. But modern rock music, people have listed Guns N' Roses as influence: Fall Out Boy, Avenged Sevenfold, Buck Cherry of all things, Hinder.
I forgot about Buck Cherry.
Yeah, Nickelback.
Sure. Yeah.
Bullet for My Valentine, Fozzy, underrated band. Chris Jericho's band, Fozzy, underrated.
Oh,
yeah, that's actually pretty. They're a good band. The Strokes, 41, and Black Label Society.
Okay.
I guess they're like the older guys. I'm like, I guess, okay. So I didn't go into a lot of the stuff in Axl because it kind of feels like you're kicking a kid when he's down. And there's so many stories of the dumb shit he did, so I didn't really kick him too hard this time. If we do Guns N' Roses again, maybe I'll find some more dirt on the guy. It's not hard.
there you go.
But we find the band kind of stuff on here. How many average monthly Spotify listeners do you think Guns N' Roses gets right now on just Spotify?
Oh wow. God, I have no idea.
It's a popularity thing, because sales are hard in the time frame that we live in because they count digital sales, and it's weird. So what do you think, Brandon? I'll let you go first.
Yeah.
It's millions. I'll give you that. It's millions.
But I'm trying to think, like, are they double digits? Are they single digit millions? We'll go 5.5 million.
Wow, that feels low, but I mean, I'm getting the sense that it's lower than I would have said. I would have gone higher, but just judging by facial expressions over here. Okay, I'm gonna say 15 million.
Yes, you were closer for sure. Almost 25.
Oh wow,
24.4, and I just checked it this evening. So they were at 23.8 last week. So they're picking up steam, but they are going to tour again pretty soon here. So
I'm terrible
makes
at
sense.
this game.
You are pretty bad at this game. Like, for comparison, like Ed Sheeran is like in the 60s or 70s. Taylor's in the 80s.
Oh, sure.
Millions of listeners a month. Like, it's ridiculous. Those numbers are just stupid. Like Bad Bunny is almost 90 million.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Really?
He's been the most streamed Spotify artist for 3 years running.
Wow.
Well, considering that, Guns N' Roses hasn't put out an album other than Chinese Democracy.
They haven't put out an album.
Since the 90s, basically. I mean, it's surprising that they're still
25
that relevant.
mil.
Yeah.
So it's they're up there. Now, Appetite for Destruction was released July 21st, 1987. Brandon wasn't even born yet.
I was not even born yet, guys.
It's their debut album. It's 12 tracks, 54 minutes long. The album did peak at number 1 on the Billboard 200, but not for almost a full year. It took almost a full year for it to get to number 1. It debuted at number 182, and the band and the record label had to beg, borrow, and steal to get MTV to play the video for Welcome to the Jungle. They would not play it. They refused. The compromise was
4 something, right?
They played it for once a day for 3 days. And that's what they said they'll do. They'll play it once. This is kids. This is when MTV did actually play music videos, and it was cool, and there was cool stuff.
MTV was music
television. Yes.
Yeah.
So they played it once a day for 3 days, only 3 times. Within a week, it was the most requested video. To be played. It did sell over 30 million copies. In 2021, so just a year and a half or so ago, it was the 66th best-selling album in Australia. It's been on their charts since the release of the box set in 2018. So it's been on their charts for almost 5 years.
Wow.
Originally, the band they wanted to record this album in 1985. They had it all ready to go, 85. But the original guitarist, Tracy Guns, left the band, and then they brought in Slash, so they had to teach Slash all of the guitar tracks, which pushed it back 2 years and probably made it better. But there was originally was going to come out 85, or 85 or 86. They came out a little bit later than that. The album, which I thought was very interesting, apparently there was a rule in the 80s when it came to rock bands. You could only really have one ballad because they wanted to actually put November Rain on this album too.
They had Don't Cry, actually, also. They had a bunch of ballads that were written before. I didn't know Don't Cry was predated the Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah, they had. I mean, Axl was in his feels and he was just writing them, but they wanted to put November Rain and Sweet Child of Mine on this album, but the record label said, nope, you get one, and that was it. So they got Sweet Child of Mine, which I found was very interesting. Like that wouldn't happen nowadays. They're just like, well, both of those songs, we put them all on there. Let's go. Re-releasing them, or they wouldn't do it, and the band would release them on themselves. They just put it out there.
Or a deluxe edition, and then they
right away
sell it for twice the amount of money.
The Taylor Swift, the deluxe edition, they came out 3 hours later than a regular album, and then the deluxe edition, they came out the next day.
Yeah.
And they all sold over 1 million fucking copies in one day. Oh, I'm not bitter at all. So lastly, before I get to the singles, in pure, I said I wasn't going to shit talk Axl, but I'm going to a little bit now. In 1999, this is after Slash and Duff left. So it was him and Dizzy Reed and a bunch of other guys. Axl had this grand idea to re-record this album.
Yeah, they recorded it.
Spruce it up.
They re-recorded the whole album. I don't think it ever was released.
It never released.
Yeah.
They never released it. The record label was just like, no, you're not doing that. But he literally, his whole concept, he's in interviews saying, it sounded old. I wanted to spruce it up.
Like, you know what? It's rare that I take the record label side.
Yes.
Usually I'm like on the artist side.
100%.
Like, I'm so glad they reined him in.
Somebody had to save him from himself, because that would have ruined this. And he was just, he couldn't do there. So we did talk about the singles. There's 5, but one of them is a double. It's So Easy and Mr. Brownstone was released together. Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child of Mine, Paradise City, and Night Train were the singles on here. So there are 5. But, It's So Easy and Mr. Brownstone, technically there should be 6, but they released both those tracks together. So that's my stuff. I left Axl alone for the most part, except, oh God, I couldn't even imagine if it ever comes out what those songs sounded like. Hopefully they burned that play. Yeah. They burned that album. They're never going to come out here. So let's go to our favorite tracks, guys. Shane, I'll start with you. What was your favorite track on the album?
Oh boy, that is tough. You know, I don't want to be super basic. Welcome to the Jungle is just too easy, I think.
It is. It's an easy one.
It's hard to deny as just being such a catchy intro to that album. It is the perfect intro song to that album. It really does drag you down into the muck of the inner city, which is kind of where that album likes to play. And it's an amazing song. I'm going to go with something that it's weird, because I would not say that the whole song is my favorite song in the album, but it contains my favorite part that makes it, for me, the best song. And that's Rocket Queen. The second half of Rocket Queen. The first 3 minutes of Rocket Queen are fine, whatever. There's boning and, you know, the sound of them actually having sex. I know that that's a famous story with this album, is that they actually had sex with some groupies and they recorded it, and that's in Rocket Queen.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah, and it's all, you know, it's sleazebag rock stuff. And then I love that this song just encapsulates the album for me, because it starts with all of the cheesy tongue-in-cheek sex stuff. It's all gutter, you know, I'm going to tie you up, tie you down, whatever, all Axl's like bondage stuff that he likes to get into. But then it just switches on a dime halfway through the album and becomes this like incredibly pure, incredibly earnest, and just beautiful song about, like, you know, I see you standing alone, and I in such a lonely place for you to be, and, you know, I just want to hold you and take care of you. And Axl's vocals sort of start almost dancing with the guitar. There's this amazing guitar part that the solo sort of counterpoints Axl doing almost like a scat thing. And it's just freaking beautiful. And to end that album with, like, all I ever wanted was for you to know that I care, is the very last line of the entire album. This album that's been about like pimps and hoes and, like, you know, getting robbed, and it's just such a strange dynamic. It's very much a dichotomy that I think runs through the entire album. And in fact, I heard that, you know, usually there's an A side and a B side for a track, and on this they called it the G and the R side. There was the Gun side and the Roses side. And the Gun side was supposed to be like the inner city stuff. It was all the Night Train and the, you know, the Welcome to the Jungle. And then the other side was the Roses side, which was the kind of more lighthearted stuff and the more love song, you know, angle. And just to end it with a song that has both of those dynamics in it back to back is just perfection. And I even get like choked up when I hear the second half of that song. I just think it's beautiful. And I love Rocket Queen. I could ditch the whole first part, but I think you need that to contrast to really appreciate the second part. And like I said, I feel like it just sums up the entire album for me.
I agree with you. That is an amazing track. And like I said, we'll get into that later.
So
All right,
Steve,
Brandon, what about you? Oh, you want me to go first?
I don't care.
I'll go first.
Okay.
I went chalk. I went Welcome to the Jungle. And it isn't my favorite Guns N' Roses song by any stretch. That's actually Patience. I love that track. From GNR Lies. It's what's I've seen so many different artists do that thing and cover it, and it's just one of my favorite Axl tracks, I think. I love.
I know Izzy wrote the music on that, and he made it done. But I think Axl probably did the lyrics.
Yeah, Axl did it and sung it, and just it's an amazing one. Like of the covers, Chris Cornell's cover of it, it's amazing. But the opening guitar riff for Welcome to the Jungle is literally selling progressive insurance right now. Like it's so ingrained in our society that this band, who would scare the shit out of every Midwestern mom, well, maybe not mom, grandma, maybe it was from grandma. Midwestern moms might be all for it in the 80s, but would scare the living. They were like Kiss on like copious amounts of cocaine. Like this, what they were. They were this grungy, dirty band, and their stuff is being used to sell progressive car insurance. I can't. And Slash is like, hey, and he's just dopey Slash, but I think the dude has said maybe 12 words his entire life. Like every time he's live, he's just like, yeah.
Is that the commercial that's out right now? It's a car insurance commercial with him auditioning for that.
Yeah, you're in. Yeah. Cool. That's all he says. The whole cool. And it's just he probably got paid millions of fucking dollars just to play the riff for half a second and say cool. And it's just because it's Guns N' Roses. But the funny thing, and I love this because I am a Midwestern boy and haven't been to LA yet, but I can only imagine the time frame. The song is just about a Midwestern boy like Axl from Indiana, experiencing LA and getting swallowed up by everything it had to offer. It's just it kind of really hones in that era of music for me, and just that whole vibe that was going on there. So I picked Welcome to the Jungle. Brandon, what about you? What was your favorite track?
Steve, I also picked Welcome to the Jungle.
Of course you fucking did.
I did. I am so basic.
You are basic.
I did not want to go chalk, but here I am. Song is a vibe, and I'm here for it every single time that it plays. For me, I was so white. I was first introduced to this song on Guitar Hero, guys, of all places.
Oh, wow.
Yep. I'm
incredibly white.
I'm that old or that young, Shane. Exactly. So when this started, brought me back to my slight carpal tunnel and, video love for pretending like I knew how to play an actual guitar on this video game. But in all seriousness, but back to the actual track, the guitar riffs on this one during the song, absolute perfection all the way through. The musicianship of this band, and we've talked about it, Steve and I have talked about it on other, rock bands of this time. The musicianship throughout, like, these guys are good. There's a talent there, and you just can't deny it. But I did. I went chalk and went Welcome to the Jungle. So
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah. All right, Steve.
What's the game we're playing, Brandon?
I don't have a cool quip for it, but the Axl Wang, I don't know. It's time for the word association name game, guys.
Welcome to the Wang.
Wang, let's play Wang. Let's play Wang. Word association name game. Wang. Word association.
So, if you haven't listened to the podcast before, we generally play a couple of games. The first game we play is what we call our word association name game. You just heard the music for that, and that is our good friend Jair basically saying the word Wang in different tones and inflections about 50 times. We paid for that, and it probably is the best money he's ever made in his life. And I'm sure
he was
it's on the resume.
It was probably high when he did it.
100% he was high when he did it.
But just if Jair listens to this, I have to remind him, you still need to learn how to roll your own blunts, buddy.
Yeah, tell your wife that you said thank you, because that didn't happen.
Exactly.
But so the word association name game is Brandon is going to take 2 tracks. You got 2, right?
I've got
Okay.
2, yes.
Well, usually we do 2 tracks, and he is going to take the song titles and do a little bit of a word association, and we have to guess what song title he's talking about. Now, these can go off the rails very quickly, or they can, depends on what happens. So, Brandon.
Yep.
Get after it. What you got?
All right, guys. Here's your first clue. Day bus. Easy. Heat it up.
Day bus?
Day bus.
Day bus.
It's night train.
It is night train.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Give me a hard one. Come on.
I know.
Get dirty. Embrace your inner Axel.
I can't get dirty. I mean, I can, but only so much.
Think of Steel Panther.
Yeah. All right, next one. Apparently, it's Lafayette, Indiana.
Paradise City?
Yes, sir.
Anybody who's been to Indiana, you know that's not true.
Right. Yeah.
It's like Gary, Indiana. Ooh.
Yeah.
The
Whenever I
weirdest
think,
fucking places in Indiana.
whenever I think of Indiana, like the color gray just seems to be
And
like
corn.
Corn.
Yeah, with a little bit of Indiana.
Hey, where are you
Hoosier
from?
red.
I am from California.
Okay, good.
I still live in California.
Okay, good. Because I'm like, he's like, I'm from Indiana. Fuck.
Yeah, no, I've traveled pretty extensively in the Midwest, and it is, I mean, that is the interesting thing with Axl is that, and I'm not an Axl Rose apologist, just to go on the record here, but you know, the guy, it is interesting to see like his history and kind of, it makes you understand why he is the way it is. It's not a good excuse, and it's not, you know, it doesn't excuse what he's done, but you know, the guy grew up in Indiana. He was like molested by his dad. His dad ended up getting killed. It's just a crazy story. He grew up Pentecostal and like, you know, in hardcore religion, and, you know, finally sort of escaped and ended up doing his rock thing. But, you know, coming from the Midwest and landing in LA, you know, it just, once you read a little bit about his backstory, like I said, no excuses, but at least explanations. You go, okay, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, if anybody's from the Midwest, and we are a Midwest podcast, so a lot of our fans are run from Midwest and around, but we're talking like Michigan down to like Indiana, Ohio, and then that area, just that area. Yes, generally very sheltered people, and then you go to the Mecca of all things not sheltered, and you have to it's like they throw you to the wolves, and it's lucky he came out alive, really.
Yeah, I mean it's sheltered, but like also like abused and indoctrinated too.
And then super religion, and the think of where he came from and the abuse and everything's got going on. And for what I know, being a foster adoptive dad, I know the things that can stick with kids and ruin them for the rest of their lives. And to be able to use that pain and all of the indoctrination that he took place there, turning into something super duper awesome, and then going batshit crazy, but then also coming back. It makes a lot of sense. Like you said, you're just like, oh, yep, that okay. The Chinese democracy right there. We got that whole whole thing. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I like it. All
right, guys. So it is time to talk about our least favorite tracks or most skippable tracks or whatever you want to call it. Steve, let's start with you. Dude, what was your least favorite track on this one?
I went with a track that was the record label fucked up. They shouldn't have released it this way. They should have did it the way that Axl and the band wanted to do it. But I picked You're Crazy. Okay. So this track was supposed to be an acoustic slower track called Fucking Crazy. The band was encouraged to change the title and to potentially gain radio play. And have the producer convince them to speed it up and go electric. Now, this is on their second album as Fucking Crazy, and the acoustic live version of it is on GNR Lives. It should have been the acoustic live, more bluesy track because so much better, so much cleaner, and just sounds like it's not forced. You're Crazy sounds forced. It sounds like he's not really in it because he didn't want to do it that way. And they don't play You're Crazy anymore at all. They don't play that track. They play Fucking Crazy. And it's the better play. So I picked You're Crazy because it is, for me, it's the lowest point on the album. What about you, Brandon?
For me, I picked It's So Easy. For me, it comes off the heels of Welcome to the Jungle. And Welcome to the Jungle, super popular, obviously. So I was expecting something else than that would just be more. I don't know. The vocals kind of started off normal. I don't know. Without going to that upper register right away that he sings in. Kind of nitpicky, but it's not a bad song, but I think it would have been better. It's a good song. So I'm saying it would be better for me if it was placed somewhere else on the album. I think that where they had it just didn't quite work there. So that's for me. So Shane,
Makes
what about
sense.
you, man?
Both of those, I made a list of least favorite songs.
Oh, go
and
for it.
Both of those were on there for mostly the exact same reasons. It's So Easy to me is also just a little bit. I mean, I can handle a good amount of like misogyny in my music. I'm fine with it. But that is like, it's pretty rough. You know, the turnaround bitch I got a use for you stuff is a little over the top.
Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting because it was mirroring a lot of what was going on in sort of hip hop. And Axel, as much as he definitely had his own issues with racism. I mean, we see it in Lies and he famously there's actually One in a Million is hard for me because that was a song that I liked as a teenager and just kind of ignored that he used the N-word in it. And Axel just is again a very complicated guy, but this album is interesting to me because it does, like I said, mirror sort of what was happening with hip hop. There's a lot of like bitches and hoes in this, and sort of like bros before hoes attitude in this, like go to the liquor store, lady, and get me some alcohol. And like it's very much in that vein. And those songs are a little hard for me to take these days. Also, for me, Anything Goes, which is just Axel's sex stuff. It's just like all the stuff that he wants to do with girls, and it's very basic. And what I love about this album in a lot of ways is how it transcends hair rock, right? Like, and I'm actually a fan of hair rock. There's a lot of I love some. I can get down with some Motley Crue and some Poison, and I sort of grew up around that era and kind of dabbled back and forth. And so and Steel Panther I love. I think they're hilarious.
Oh yes, we do too.
But this album for me transcended so much of that because of how gritty it was, because of how angry it was, how down in the dirt it got. There just wasn't that grittiness to any other hair band. This was supposed to be glam music, but there's nothing glamorous about this album. It's all down in the weeds. And at the same time, there's these, very uplifting songs, and there's very pure stuff in it too. And I think Anything Goes is the one song that sort of just feels like a stupid hairband sex song, and it didn't work for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is one of those, like any of those work, but yeah, Anything Goes there is. If this album had come out in the last couple of years, it wouldn't have made it. There's so much that you're like, now we know. We all knew. It's just like, okay, that's not cool. You can't do that. But the 80s and the 90s were weird. We always talk about 80s PG in our house, and like the kids want to watch a movie, and I'm like, what is it? And they're like, oh, it's Ghostbusters. Which one? Like the original? Or like, yeah, I was like, the 9-year-old's not watching the original. Right. Not yet.
Right.
There's a couple of scenes. I'm like, not. Even the Goonies, I'm like, there's a couple there too. Like, I forget about those. Like, we watched Howard the Duck the other day. I didn't realize how dirty that movie was. Holy crap. I watched that when I was like 7.
Yeah.
My mom sucks. The more you learn about trauma, you're like, people ask, like, were you traumatized as a child? I'm like, the more I know now, yes, I was. Right. But it was cool. Like, we got to do fun stuff, and nobody found out about it because there wasn't the fucking internet.
Interspecies sex scene in that movie.
Yes, yes, and it's like there's so much, and you're just like, even the like kids movies in the 80s, like you're just like, like Never Ending Story. You're like, this is depressing as hell. What the no?
Yeah.
It's just is what it is. But I don't know. I like it. I still like those movies. They're still nostalgic and fun. I'm just like, okay, we're gonna skip this part. We're gonna skip this scene. We're not doing that one. Yep. But I know it's coming up. So it is time for our second game. Brandon, do you want to introduce our second game?
I do, guys. It is time for Shatner's Poetry Slam.
Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Shatner's Poetry Slam.
All right, guys. So if you're familiar with the game, what's going to happen here is I picked 2 tracks. I'm going to read the lyrics of these 2 tracks. Some of these get pretty interesting. They're all words I can say. That's good. That's good news.
True.
So they're all words I can say.
Yeah, they're not like
legitimately,
hip hop tracks then that you make me do.
or
That's no
Steel
fun.
Panther,
Or Steel Panther. Yes, I did have to read
or
lyrics for Steel
Wheeler
Panther.
Walker Jr., which is
Or Wheeler
amazing.
Walker Jr. Yes.
I'm just saying, we picked the fun ones for you. You're
Whatever.
so white, and it just makes me so happy when you have to do those.
I go from white to rosy very quickly.
And I laugh
Yes.
really hard.
All right.
So let's start off with the first one. So I'm going to read the lyrics here, monotone wise, not really give you a lot of inflection. You have to guess what song I'm talking about. First one. I get up around 7.
Mr. Brownstone.
Man.
Nailed it.
Yep. Damn. He's gonna get this one pretty quickly too, Brandon. I'm just saying right now.
Nope, you're fine. It's totally
gonna
fine.
happen because the opening track.
Fine. I also don't want to look like I'm not. I'll most
That's
likely
fine.
look like an idiot if I guess. So.
I picked this one because of the first line of the song because it's hilarious.
Great.
Your daddy works in porno. There it is.
I knew. I mean, how can you not choose the most classic? To me, that is probably the most classic intro lyrics on any album. Your daddy works in porno now that mommy's not around.
Now that mommy's not around.
Heroin, and now she's underground. Like you've already got a woman who is on cocaine. Her dad, is in porn, and her mom's dead. Like within 2 lines. That's a crazy song.
It's amazing. I was just like, I looked at the songs really quick. I'm like, yep, that one's gotta work. And I was gonna do Rocket Queen too, but I didn't do it. I was like, okay, I'll have to wait on Rocket Queen here. But speaking of Rocket Queen, it's actually my deep cut.
Okay.
And it's a lot of the things that you mentioned as well, Shane. But the first 3 minutes of this song really does personify that 80s sleaze. And it has the redeeming quality. It does. I don't know how, but it does. But the infamous trivia is that this is actually the sound clip of drummer Steven Adler's girlfriend, Adriana Smith, banging Axl Rose. And they used it as a background music because why wouldn't you? The girlfriend, Adriana Smith, had the best quote ever. It was for 80s completely. When asked by the media about this, she says, "I did it for the band."
Yep. There you go.
All right.
It doesn't get a whole lot darker than that. Like I said, the song does have some. It does try to redeem itself in the last minute and a half, 2 minutes, and it does a pretty good job. There is a little bit of touching the feels. We're touching the feels prior to this too, but it is one of those things where you're just like, what? And the first time I listened to it, I knew there was a song that they did that had this on there, but I had my headphones in and I was like, wait a sec. I was at work. I was like, oh, headphones are on. We're good. Okay. Whew. Okay. God, what's going on here? And I looked at it. I'm like, listened. I was like, and I replayed it again. I was like, yup, that's definitely happening. Way to go. So my deep cut was Rocket Queen. Brandon. So Shane had Rocket Queen for his favorite track. So I'm gonna go with you. What was your deep cut?
Picked Mr. Brownstone.
All right.
It was my deep cut. Groove and beat that kind of gets this song going is just straight fire. I hadn't heard this song up until now because whatever. I mean, I'm not surprised that I haven't heard the song, but whatever. But this
wasn't on Rock Band?
Huh?
It wasn't on Rock Band?
Correct. And I didn't know what Guns N' Roses was until I was older because
your mom said no.
Sheltered, right. But this song, like many others on this album, I mentioned it earlier, really shows off how amazing these guys are at playing music. Incredibly good, incredibly talented. I could never emulate it. This entire track with that crazy riff, clean, crisp, great. If you hadn't heard the song, I highly recommend it. Super good. So
Mr. Brownstone.
Mr. Brownstone was my deep cut. So
all right, Shane, what about you? What was your deep cut?
So mine isn't Mr. Brownstone, but one cool thing I will say about that song is that it really encapsulates how dense sonically this album is and how everything, I mean, the 2 guitars are panned left and right for most of the album. And one time I was driving, I remember I had a really beater car when I was like 20 or something. and one of the sides of the speakers went out, and so I only had like the left or right. And this album is unlistenable if you only hear one of it, because the riffs don't sound right, because every single riff is a layer of the two guitars doing complementary but different things. And it's really wild to hear if you just listen to one side. If you just hear Izzy or just hear Slash, it's just, you can barely listen to it because it doesn't sound like what the album sounds like.
So
And
did
you-
your
Similar to, like,
car
what-
actually go for like one, like playing it to like silent for like 2 seconds?
Yeah, well, it's not really silent. It's just that they're playing
Well,
different
right.
things. So yeah, you hear, but there is that. Yeah, especially in like Rocket Queen and stuff, you'll hear the like, one guitar will stop, and you're expecting the kind of the noodling on the other side, and you don't get it. And it's just really it's again, it's unlistenable if you've heard the whole album the way it's supposed to be heard.
It's
So
similar
yeah,
to listening to it with like one earbud in.
yeah, exactly.
And like a lot of us in our daily lives will have an earbud in because you're out shopping or you're doing your thing. You just want to listen to something and not pay attention to what's going on around you. So you listen to one earbud in, and like you don't realize that in some of these, especially these older albums, you're missing half of of the music. So you have to like I've done it before and like put my headphones on and like pulled it back up and I went, whoa, hold up. That's
And
The whole different thing.
it is, and it's amazing that worked, because when you have two guitarists who are as talented and strong as they are, it feels like those guitars should be fighting against each other, and it should just be a mess. And somehow it just interlocks perfectly, and everything works. It's just incredibly tasteful the way that they arrange those guitars.
yeah, 100% agree.
And my deep cut would be, so this is where I'm going to go basic and say Sweet Child, because it is just a gorgeous song. I love that riff so much. And it was one of the first things I learned on guitar, just because I had to learn, I just had to know it, and I would play it all the time. And like, I know that it's funny because it's like Slash hated that song initially. It was a little, it was actually just a guitar exercise that he would do all the time. He'd just come up with this little finger exercise, and people heard him playing it, and they just started writing music to it. And he was kind of getting annoyed. He was like, "No, I don't want to make this into a song. I don't want this to be a song. This is just a thing that I do." And but it's such a, I just think it's so like everything works in that song, and the solo is incredible. I think it's one of the great rock and roll solos. Going into just the way it builds, and going into that wah. He's great with the wah pedal. When Slash busts out the wah pedal, it's just going to be a wild time. And everything just works. It's just such an impressive kind of, and it's really silly in a lot of ways. Like, she's got eyes of the bluest skies, and her hair is blood. It's this cheesiest poetry. And again, one of those tracks that kind of shouldn't work. It's just one of those amazing magic pieces of Guns N' Roses lore that somehow these stupid, ridiculous lyrics and this little, exercise that Slash was doing all came together to just create this incredible, undeniable song that became a juggernaut. And I still love it. It's a great song.
Oh, 100%. I agree with you. It's and I'm kind of surprised none of us mentioned it, but it's one of those ones. There's so many that you can choose from in their repertoire, but in this album, it's jam packed. And you don't want to try to pick chalk every time, but it makes sense. I get you.
Yeah.
So to wrap this thing up, guys, I'll go first. Give it a rating and wrap it up here. Now, Guns N' Roses is one of those bands that like preached excess and debauchery, and lived it. They lived that lifestyle fully. It wasn't just a play. They did it. In every facet of what you would think of, they did everything: drugs, booze, drugs, women, drugs, more drugs. But they were living that life. This album is like a monster that started off kind of a 5-year span that they owned the rock and roll scene. They were the top draw. If Axl had kind of kept himself clean in the band themselves, because Duff and Izzy and Slash were not Boy Scouts by any means. Axl was like the champion of everything else, but I mean, I think Duff died like 3 times. So
one of their big controversies, right before they broke up, actually, was Axl going on stage and saying, he called out the band and said, "A couple of these guys in here are still dancing with Mr. Brownstone, and they need to stop." And everyone got into a big argument. And
if they could have kept themselves relatively clean, what may have been in the 90s, if they could have just got their shit together and just rode that wave a little bit longer. But that's why music is so important to what we do and like our lives, because you could have just a 5-year span that will be around for the next 100 years. Easy. And it's just there. The album itself isn't perfect. A lot of tracks on here would be canceled right now. It's damn entertaining though, and it's fun. It's not. It's a period piece. You have to kind of listen to it as like, this is a period piece. Think about what happened in the 80s. Think about what's going on here, and kind of put your mind in that lens. You can't think about it in the Me Too movement that we're currently in now and think, oh, this is terrible. Well, it might be, but in the genre and the time frame, it really wasn't even that bad comparatively to other bands and other tracks.
Right.
But it is, like I said, it is damn entertaining. For me, I gave it a 7 out of 10. And I just kind of went that route with it.
I like it.
What about you guys? What do you got, Brian?
All right. So for me, this album overall, very good. Great handful of songs that we obviously know, love, all that good stuff. But also there were some songs on here that I really enjoyed that I hadn't heard before listening to this one. So overall, I feel like this album did a really good job in regards to construction of how it was laid out. Singles weren't so close together, more spread out. It's kind of how I like it. Had a good overall listen. I was able to listen to the whole album with the anticipation of what was coming to the tracks that I knew, instead of just kind of being bombarded one way or another as far as when those popular tracks came about. So for me, pretty good album. Like Steve said, period piece, but you can't be mad about it. For me, I'm giving this one, I don't normally go like halves and 3/4, but I'm going to do it anyway. 7.75 out of 10, because that's what I do.
Not going to 6.9. Come on, Steel Panther.
6. I can't do 6.9. You can only do 6.9 for Wheeler Walker Jr. and Steel Panther. So
makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shane, what about you, man? What are your final thoughts on this one?
I agree. It's not a perfect album, but even its flaws for me are endearing. It is a period piece. It in a lot of ways sort of encapsulates a time in music and in America in a lot of ways, and even a geography, sort of like the Sunset Strip in the 80s. And this is an album that I think is responsible for a lot of people picking up the guitar and a lot of people getting into music and maybe expanding their horizons, and that was certainly the case for me. And yeah, I think that even the tracks that I don't like, that I say I don't like, are just the tracks that I like least on the album. But I can listen to this album from track 1 all the way to track 12 and just have a great time all the way through it. For me, it's not flawless, but that makes it in some ways even more likable. It's not a perfect piece of work that we put on a pedestal all the time. It's like something that it's gritty, and you can put it in your, if you have a CD player these days or a record player or whatever you're listening to, or you can listen to it on your phone. And
I agree with you. I think it's one of those ones where like you were just getting a taste of Axl. You hadn't gotten sick of Axl yet, so you're just getting a taste of Axl. So it's definitely that period piece. But yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, so for me, I think it's clouded a little bit by nostalgia for it.
For sure.
I don't know if I were you and had found it only through Guitar Hero and just kind of listened to it later in life, I don't know what I'd think about it. But that being sort of a time period for me, for me, it's I'd say about a solid 8.
Yeah,
Works.
Yeah,
we're all right around the same time, so same numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, that was our review of Guns N' Roses and Appetite for Destruction. Go check it out if you haven't already. It's a good album. It's a good listen. It'll bring you back. Have a good time with it. So Shane, this one is, well, I mean, people are listening. It's already dropped. Hello, but this one is dropping a week from tomorrow, February the 10th. Do you have anything that you want to plug, or where can our fans find you and what you're doing?
Oh yeah, so I'm doing a ton of shows coming up. I'll be at if you're in California, in Northern California, I'm going to be at Rooster T. Feathers opening for Lori Kilmartin for 5 shows in the first weekend in March. And then you can check out all my shows at shanerogers.net. And then my podcast, Midnight Facts for Insomniacs. I think if you like this podcast, you like a couple guys talking about interesting stuff and being a little bit silly, then you'll probably enjoy it. That's Midnight Facts for Insomniacs in any podcast player.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. I love it.
And we'll get
So-
those all posted for you too in our show notes. Soon.
Yeah, those will be in our show notes. So guys, go check out Shane and what he's doing out there in California. I mean, if you're in Michigan, grab a plane ticket, guys. Just head on out there. Just
Or
just do it.
support him on, socials.
Yeah, absolutely. Support him on socials. Go listen to his podcast. Give him a rating and review because we all like those. We all appreciate that. Give us 5 stars. Give him 5 stars because we told you to. That's
listen
what it
to
is.
us.
Yeah, you listen to us now. No, that
No,
only
you don't.
No, not at all.
Don't even say it. Don't. You're gonna get yourself in trouble.
What?
I thought you were gonna say, "Oh, my wife listens to me."
Oh, no, not at all.
Dogs, maybe.
Maybe loosely. So anyway, speaking of I don't know, guys, you can follow us on Facebook. Search the Notes Magoats podcast. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Notes Magoats Pod. You can technically find us on Twitter, but we don't really post on there because why, Steve?
Fuck Elon Musk.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yeah. So we just kind of avoid that. Like,
I do want to get the blue check mark and get kicked off of Twitter, though. I'm pretty sure I can do it.
Hey, we'll do what
If
we
I
can.
pay him and then get kicked off, I'm thinking I can do that.
I think it only
Absolutely.
takes $8 a month to get a blue check
Yeah,
mark.
I can. I mean, $8.
Yeah,
I've done stupider things for a lot more money.
for a lot less.
No, well,
Oh.
I've done more stupid things and paid a lot more money to do them.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. All right. So, guys, send us an email, the notesmagoatspodcast@gmail.com. We'll answer your questions, whatever questions you have. Because right now, all I'm getting is spam because Steve did something and now all I get is spam. It is what it is. Steve probably signed up for Steve, you probably signed up for OnlyFans is what it was under the
tried.
Notes Magoats podcast. And now that's
Only
what happened.
goats.
Yeah. Only goats. Yeah. It's going to be what it is, isn't it?
We're making like
Yeah.
3 cents a day. We're good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Steve, do you have anything else?
I don't, man. I think we did really well there. I had a lot of fun. Shane, thank you for coming on. This has been a great time. You're making it work being out in California. I know we're in Michigan, so but I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun to talk about a band that we made them sound nice and like
Yeah.
good for a minute there. I like it. So I do appreciate it. So it was a good time.
Thanks for having me, you guys. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
definitely.
Fun.
All right, guys. So this is the Notes Magoats podcast. I am Brandon,
And I'm Steve.
and we will see you guys on Tuesday.
See you guys.
Notes, my goats. Notes, my goats.